My name is Sam Ward, and I'm here today to present to you the introduction to our mission mapping resource. Here it is in all its beauty. Hopefully you've got a copy of it in front of you. We created this resource to help you better understand your community and guide your missional strategy. It was William Carey that wrote, "To know the will of God, you need an open Bible and an open map." And it's those two things that we're going to try and bring together to better help you explore your patch. Knowing your context is essential. Not one neighborhood is the same. Each community is unique and nuanced, and therefore not one single form of mission is going to be satisfactory. We need to learn about our neighborhood in order to strategically plan the mission that we intend to do there. To understand your community, we're going to help you map it using a process we like to call community exegesis. Exegesis means to make critical interpretations from what you read in front of you, to better understand and draw meaning from the community around you. We exegete scripture all the time, and it's the way in which we uncover layers of meaning hidden within the text. We examine and we explore, we research and we reflect upon what we read. And this too is a process that we can apply to our communities. Let me give you some biblical examples of this concept. Most famously, you'll find this in Numbers chapter 13. That moment when Moses sends out 12 spies to search out the land. It says this from verse 17. When Moses sent them to explore Canaan, he said, "Go up through the Negev and on into the hill country. See what the land is like, and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they walled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land." They're sent out as spies with a bunch of questions to bring answers to. They're sent out with intention. Whose land is this? What is that land like? What will we encounter when we cross over the border, and will it be worth our effort? And then you see this same observational approach applied in the New Testament. The Apostle Paul in Acts 17, he arrives in Athens and he's waiting for his friends Silas and Timothy. And as Paul waits, he wanders around the city. He goes from the synagogue to the marketplace and he engages in conversations with the locals and he makes observations about their culture. And it says this, Acts 17, verse 21. All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with an inscription, 'To an unknown God.' So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship. And this is what I'm going to proclaim to you." As he walked around and began to observe and look carefully, it's there that he saw some things, some idols of worship and some approaches to life that he thought he would use as his approach, his missional strategy. And it's that concept that we want to develop as we move on in our session. So how do we exegete our communities? Well, to better understand the neighborhoods within which we live, we need to explore a few things. We need to look at the history, the geography, the demography, the people that exist there and who they are. We need to look at culture and also the spirituality of the place. So let's first look at the history of our communities. Do some research on the history of your area. What can you find out about the history of the community in which you live? Why was it given the name that it has? What are the stories that your neighborhood tell of its history? I also love to ask questions like, are there any major events that occurred there? What are the famous people that come from your patch and what did they achieve? How does history affect life in the community today? Maybe take a moment just to reflect on your personal history. How did your family end up in this neighborhood? What's the story of your journey into this part of the world? Next, we move on to culture. We need to examine the cultures that exist in our communities. And so we have to ask things like, how is authority viewed? How is art expressed? What are the expected rhythms of life? What's masculinity and femininity like? And how are they expressed in the community? Is your neighborhood matriarchal or patriarchal? What are the political influences that have taken and shaped the nature of things in your neighborhood? Are there any subcultures that you can identify? Have there been economic decisions made about your community that have shaped things? Take a moment just to reflect and ask yourself how you connect with culture within your community. Next, we move on to geography. How is your neighborhood laid out? Why was your neighborhood designed the way that it was? How does the geography affect life today? What are the physical signs of wealth or the physical signs of deprivation? What are the signs of security and how does security outwork itself in the neighborhood? Where do people gather? Where are the third spaces? Where do people shop and have fun? Take a moment to reflect and ask, why did you choose the house you bought? And why do you live on the street in which you live? Next, we move to demography, the study of people. Who are the people of your community? What jobs do they do and where do they work? How would you describe the age and diversity of the people that surround you? Does everybody speak English or are there multiple languages in play? Who is moving into your community and why are they coming? Who is moving out and why do they want to leave? Has your neighborhood become transient or has it been the same through generations? What are the observations that you can make about the people that live and surround you? And finally, we move on to spirituality and faith. A key starting point here is to ask, what is God already doing in this neighborhood? Before I start to come up with any missional strategy, can I identify what the Lord has been working on? Can I locate other churches in the neighborhood? And do you know what they're doing to serve your community? Are there other visible signs of faith and other faiths around the neighborhood? I also like to ask this, what is the spiritual heritage of your community? Do people worship locally or do they travel out of the neighborhood in order to worship? Has your church become a commuter church or are you a community church? What are the gods of your culture? What do people worship? Can you identify the idols like Paul did in Athens? So why don't you ask yourself, do you know of people of faith that live nearby and live within close proximity? So how do we best approach community mapping? Firstly, it's important to identify a characteristic within us that I like to call going as a learner. It's important that we are humble in our approach, that we're teachable and inquisitive, that we look first to serve and seek friendship, not just those that we can evangelize to. that we ask questions, whether formally or informally, that bring us to the place of understanding. Secondly, it's important to seek out an informer from within the neighborhood. Find that person of peace. A person of peace is someone who opens the way for the gospel to enter into a society or a group or a neighborhood. Often those people aren't believers. They're the gatekeepers to community. You find this in the New Testament, people like Levi, who welcomes, whether they're tax collectors or business associates or sinners, to a table where they can encounter Christ. Or you find it with the woman at the well in John chapter 4, who after her encounter with Jesus leaves and goes back to her community, calling them to come and meet the man who knew everything about her. And then you find it also in the Old Testament when we think about the prostitute called Rahab in the walls of Jericho, who makes possible the way of God, who makes possible the mission of God to continue at her own risk. Even though she wouldn't be considered a person of God, she's a person of peace. Find the person of peace within your neighborhood who can open the way in which you can share the gospel and build genuine relationships. It's important that you understand your community, and you'll do that best with those around you, not at arm's length, but in close proximity. Learn what it is to rely and to receive from those that you've come to serve. Fourth, reflect and review. This isn't a one-time exercise. It's important to regularly sit with your map and ask those same questions to see if things are changing, to analyze and strategically review what is going on around you. 5, filter everything through the Bible. How do you reflect on what you're seeing around you, and what might God be saying about your observations? What is the Bible speaking, and how can you apply it to your exegesis of the community? Number 6, partner with others. How are you going to develop a strategy that works with others to see the community come to faith in Christ? What can you learn from their mistakes, and how can you join them in their mission? And finally, here are some practical steps for how you can better know your neighborhood. The key one for me has been prayer walking. Prayer walking with my senses open. What can I see? What can I hear? And what can I smell? And what do they tell me about the neighborhood? I'll often take surveys, sometimes go around and speak to neighbors about what they see in the community. What are the best things, and what needs to change, and what can they see as the way forward? Sometimes try door knocking, or stand in a central position and ask key questions of your neighborhoods with some kind of pop-up event. A key for me is finding storytellers. People who just love to share stories of what's going on, for good or for ill. They're going to tell me what's happening around me in the neighborhood. I hope this has inspired you to get into your community and get mapping. Use that map occasionally, intermittently, to review and to reflect on what God is doing. As you do it, listen to the Lord. Allow him to fill you with hope as you prayerfully explore mission together with him and the community in which he's placed you. Be inspired, keep going, and enjoy all this process of mission mapping. Thanks for watching.